The security footage played in crystal-clear resolution on Zara Patterson's laptop screen, showing her husband of 3 years wrapped around another woman in his private office. Her hand instinctively moved to her growing belly, 6 months pregnant with their first child, as she watched Alexander's hands roam over the supermodel's body with a familiarity that made her stomach turn. This wasn't a moment of weakness or a mistake, this was clearly an established affair, judging by how comfortable they looked together. "Mrs. Patterson, I'm so sorry you had to see this," whispered James, the head of security at Alexander's company. He'd been loyal to her since she'd helped his daughter get into college, and his face showed genuine pain at having to deliver this devastating news. "I couldn't stay silent anymore. This has been going on for 8 months. 8 months. Zara felt the room spin around her. That meant Alexander had started his affair just 1 month after they'd found out about the pregnancy. While she'd been dealing with morning sickness and planning their future as a family, he'd been planning his escape with Natasha Vale, the 23-year-old Brazilian model who graced magazine covers worldwide. The video continued playing, showing Alexander and Natasha in passionate embraces, laughing together, sharing intimate moments that should have belonged to his wife. In one particularly painful scene, Zara watched as Alexander showed Natasha the ultrasound photos, the same ones Zara had excitedly shared with him just days before, hoping to see joy in his eyes instead of the indifference she'd noticed lately. "There's more," James said quietly, fast-forwarding through the footage. "He's been using company resources to fund her lifestyle. Private jets, jewelry, that penthouse apartment downtown, it's all being paid for through shell companies connected to Patterson Industries." Zara closed the laptop with shaking hands. Alexander Patterson, the man she'd fallen in love with during her final year at Stanford Business School, the man who'd promised to love her forever, had not only betrayed their marriage but was stealing from his own company to fund his affair. The same company that her own family's investments had helped save from bankruptcy 5 years ago, though Alexander had no idea about her family's involvement. She looked around their home, the mansion in Beverly Hills that Alexander insisted they buy to maintain his image as a successful CEO. Every expensive piece of furniture, every piece of art, every luxury item suddenly felt like a mockery. She'd given up her own career ambitions to support his rise to success, playing the perfect CEO wife, attending charity galas and business dinners, all while hiding her own identity and capabilities. Her phone buzzed with a text message from Alexander. "Working late again tonight, honey. Don't wait up. Love you. Love you." The words that once made her heart flutter now felt like daggers. How many times had he sent this exact message while he was actually with Natasha? How many business trips had been romantic getaways? How many times had he come home to her with the scent of another woman still clinging to his clothes? Zara walked to the window overlooking their perfectly manicured garden, her reflection showing a woman who looked far older than her 28 years. The stress of a difficult pregnancy combined with Alexander's growing coldness had taken its toll. She'd attributed his distance to work pressure, never imagining he was planning to replace her entirely. The baby kicked as if sensing her emotional turmoil. She placed both hands on her belly, making a silent promise to her unborn child. "Mommy's going to make sure you're safe, little one. And Mommy's going to make sure Daddy pays for what he's done to us." Her phone rang, Alexander calling. For a moment she considered not answering, but she needed to hear his voice now that she knew the truth. She needed to understand how someone could lie so convincingly. "Hi honey," his smooth voice came through the speaker, the same voice that used to whisper sweet nothings in her ear. "How are you feeling? How's the baby?" "We're fine," she managed to say, her voice remarkably steady. "When will you be home?" "Probably not until very late. This Patterson Industries merger is taking everything I've got. You understand, right? I'm doing this for our family's future. Our family's future." The lies came so easily to him. While he spoke about their future, he was actively planning to destroy it for a woman barely out of her teens. "Of course I understand," Zara replied, surprising herself with how calm she sounded. "You do what you need to do." After hanging up, she sat in the growing darkness of their bedroom, not bothering to turn on the lights. For 3 years she'd been the supportive wife, the understanding partner who never questioned his long hours or sudden business trips. She'd been so naive, so trusting, so completely blind to the man her husband really was. But Alexander had made one crucial mistake in his betrayal. He'd underestimated his wife completely. He saw her as just another pretty face he'd married for appearances, a simple woman from a middle-class background who'd been lucky enough to catch the attention of a billionaire CEO. He had no idea that Zara Richardson Patterson was actually Zara Richardson Chin, heir to the Richardson Chin technology empire, worth over $50 billion. She'd hidden her true identity when they first met, tired of men who only wanted her for her family's money. Alexander had fallen in love with who he thought was just a graduate student working part-time jobs to pay her way through business school. She'd maintained the charade throughout their marriage, letting him believe he was the one with all the power and money in their relationship. Now, as she sat in the darkness carrying his child while he whispered sweet lies to another woman, Zara felt something cold and determined settling in her chest. Alexander wanted to discard her like she meant nothing? He wanted to humiliate her publicly by flaunting his young mistress? He was about to learn that he'd picked the wrong woman to betray. The baby kicked again, stronger this time, and Zara smiled for the first time in months. "Don't worry, little one," she whispered. "Daddy's about to discover that some women don't just walk away quietly. Some women make sure justice is served." Tomorrow she would begin the systematic destruction of Alexander Patterson's world. But tonight, she would let him enjoy his last evening of thinking he held all the cards. The game was about to change completely, and Alexander had no idea he was about to face an opponent who could buy and sell his entire company without batting an eye. 3 weeks after discovering Alexander's betrayal, Zara sat in her morning routine, pretending everything was normal while her husband read the financial news over breakfast. Her acting skills had improved dramatically since learning the truth. She'd become an expert at smiling while her heart burned with rage, at making small talk while planning his destruction. Alexander's phone buzzed constantly with what she now knew were messages from Natasha. Each ping was like a small stab, but she endured it, gathering information and waiting for the right moment to strike back. "I have to fly to Miami this weekend," Alexander announced, not looking up from his tablet. "Big merger meeting with the Thompson Group." Zara knew there was no Thompson Group meeting. James had already informed her that Natasha was shooting a swimsuit campaign in Miami that same weekend. The lies came so easily to Alexander now that she wondered if he'd always been this deceptive, or if the affair had simply revealed his true nature. "That's fine," she replied, buttering her toast with steady hands. "I'll probably visit my college roommate Rachel anyway. She's been asking me to come see the baby preparations." It wasn't entirely a lie. Rachel had been asking her to visit, but Zara's real plans for the weekend involved meeting with her family's legal team and financial advisors. It was time to put her plan into motion. That afternoon, as Alexander prepared for another late meeting, he seemed more excited than usual. He actually hummed while getting dressed, chose his most expensive cologne, and spent extra time on his appearance. The casual cruelty of his happiness while planning to betray her made Zara's decision even easier. "You seem in a good mood," she observed from their bed, where she was pretending to rest due to pregnancy fatigue. "Just excited about closing this big deal," he said, kissing her forehead with lips that had been on another woman just hours before. "This could set us up for life." There was no us in his plans anymore, but he kept using the word like it still meant something. The manipulation was breathtaking in its boldness. After Alexander left, Zara immediately called her driver. She'd been maintaining the illusion of being a simple housewife, but tonight she needed to make some very important calls as the Richardson heiress she really was. Her first stop was a discreet law office in Century City, where the best divorce attorney in California was waiting for her. Patricia Wong had handled divorces for tech moguls, movie stars, and politicians, but she'd never worked on a case quite like this one. "Mrs. Patterson," Patricia stood as Zara entered her office. "I've reviewed the prenup your husband had you sign. I have to be honest, on the surface, it looks like he protected himself very well. According to this document, you'd leave the marriage with very little." Zara smiled, settling into the leather chair across from Patricia's desk. That prenup was signed by Zara Richardson, a graduate student with no significant assets. But Zara Richardson Chin, heir to a $50 billion technology empire, never signed anything. Patricia's eyebrows rose. "You're Richardson Chin Tech? The family that owns half of Silicon Valley?" "My parents built that empire, and I've been secretly managing several divisions for the past 5 years, even while playing the supportive wife role. Alexander has no idea who he really married." Zara opened her briefcase and pulled out a thick folder. "These are my real financial statements, managed through trusts and shell companies to protect my privacy. I need you to prepare divorce papers that reflect my true position." For the next 2 hours, they crafted a legal strategy that would not only protect Zara's assets but would also expose Alexander's infidelity and corporate mismanagement. The evidence James had gathered would be crucial, but Zara had something even better: access to financial records that would show exactly how Alexander had been stealing company money to fund his affair. "There's something else," Zara said as their meeting concluded. I want you to prepare a hostile takeover bid for Patterson Industries. I've been quietly buying shares through various investment firms, and I now own 15% of the company. With the right financial pressure, I can force the board to accept my leadership. Patricia stared at her in amazement. You've been planning this for weeks? I've been planning this since the day I found out about Natasha Vale, Zara replied coldly. Alexander thinks he can discard me like I'm nothing, humiliate me publicly, and steal from his own company to fund his affair. He's about to learn that actions have consequences. The next morning, Zara woke early to prepare for what would either be the best or worst day of her marriage. She chose her outfit carefully, an elegant blue dress that flattered her pregnant figure, professional but not aggressive. She wanted to look composed and strong when Alexander's world came crashing down. Alexander returned from his business trip to Miami glowing with satisfaction, his phone full of photos that he thought were discreet but were clearly from a romantic getaway. He was practically bouncing with energy as he told her elaborate lies about merger meetings and business dinners that had never happened. Honey, I need to talk to you about something important, he said over lunch, his tone shifting to something she'd never heard before, nervous but determined. Here it comes, Zara thought, her heart rate quickening despite her preparation. I know this will be difficult to hear, especially with the baby coming, but I think we need to face some hard truths about our marriage. Alexander ran his hand through his hair, a gesture she'd once found endearing but now saw as pure manipulation. We've grown apart over the past year. We want different things. I think we should consider divorce. The words hung in the air between them. Zara let the silence stretch, watching as Alexander fidgeted with his napkin, probably rehearsing this speech with Natasha's encouragement. Divorce? She repeated, her voice carefully controlled. I know it's shocking, but I think it would be better for both of us in the long run. We could co-parent the baby, of course. I'd make sure you're taken care of financially, within the bounds of our prenup. He was trying to sound generous, but Zara could hear the calculation behind every word. Is there someone else? She asked quietly. Alexander's pause lasted just a fraction too long. No, of course not. This is just about us not being compatible anymore. The lie was delivered with such casual confidence that Zara almost admired his skill at deception. Almost. I need some time to think about this, she said finally. Of course. Take all the time you need. Alexander reached across the table to squeeze her hand, his touch now feeling like ice. I just want what's best for both of us. That evening, after Alexander left for another business meeting, that was actually a dinner date with Natasha, Zara made her final preparations. Tomorrow she would serve him with divorce papers that would shatter his entire world. She spent the night in the nursery they'd been preparing together, surrounded by baby clothes and toys that Alexander had helped choose back when he was still pretending to care about their future family. The irony wasn't lost on her while she prepared to bring their child into the world alone. She was also preparing to bring Alexander's carefully constructed life crashing down around him. Her phone buzzed with a message from Patricia. Everything is ready. The papers will be delivered to his office tomorrow at 2 p.m., just as his board meeting begins. Are you certain you want to proceed? Zara looked around the nursery one more time, her hand resting on her belly. Absolutely certain, she typed back. It's time Alexander learned that some mistakes can't be fixed with charm and lies. Tomorrow would mark the beginning of the end for Alexander Patterson, and the beginning of a new life for her and her baby. A life where she would never again pretend to be less than. She was never again trust someone who saw her as disposable. The game was about to begin, and Alexander still had no idea he was playing against an opponent who had already won. The boardroom at Patterson Industries fell silent as Alexander's secretary entered with an official-looking envelope during their quarterly meeting. Zara watched from the parking garage across the street through high-powered binoculars, having positioned herself perfectly to see into the glass-walled conference room on the 15th floor. She checked her watch. 2 p.m. exactly. Patricia Wong had impeccable timing. Through the binoculars, she watched Alexander's confident expression change as he opened the envelope and began reading. His face went from confusion to shock to panic in the span of 30 seconds. The other board members leaned forward, trying to understand why their CEO had gone pale and was staring at the documents like they contained a death sentence. Because in many ways they did. Zara's phone rang. He's reading them now, Patricia's voice came through her earpiece. His lawyer should be calling my office within the hour. Perfect. Phase 1 is complete. Zara lowered the binoculars and settled back into her car seat. How long until the financial audit results go public? The SEC filing will be posted by end of business today. The media should pick up the story about the missing company funds by tomorrow morning. And the offshore accounts? Frozen as of 1 hour ago. All assets connected to the shell companies he used to fund the affair are now under federal investigation. Zara smiled grimly. Alexander had no idea that when he'd stolen company money to pay for Natasha's lifestyle, he'd actually been stealing from Richardson Chin-Tech's investment fund. Her family's forensic accountants had been tracing every penny for weeks, building an ironclad case for both embezzlement and corporate fraud. Her phone buzzed with a text from Alexander. "We need to talk. Now." "I'm coming home," she texted back, though she had no intention of making this conversation easy for him. When she arrived at their mansion, she found Alexander pacing the living room like a caged animal, the divorce papers scattered across the coffee table. His perfectly styled hair was disheveled from running his hands through it, and his expensive suit was wrinkled from stress. "What the hell is this, Zara?" He waved the papers at her, his voice higher than usual. $50 billion? Richardson Chin-Tech? What kind of sick joke are you trying to pull? Zara calmly removed her jacket and sat down in the armchair across from him, her hands folded over her pregnant belly. "It's not a joke, Alexander. It's the truth you never bothered to learn about your wife. This is insane. You're a middle-class girl from Colorado. Your father sells insurance. My father is Robert Chin, co-founder of Richardson Chin Technology. My mother is Catherine Richardson Chin, who developed the operating system that runs on 60% of the world's smartphones." Zara's voice was steady and cold. "I've been managing 3 divisions of our company since I graduated from Stanford, all while pretending to be nothing more than your supportive housewife." Alexander stared at her like she'd grown a second head. "That's impossible. I would have known. Someone would have told me. Would they? You never showed any interest in my family or my background beyond what you needed to know for appearances. When I told you my parents lived quietly in Colorado, you never asked what they did for work. When I said I wanted to take time off from my career to support yours, you never asked what that career actually was." The truth was hitting him in waves, and Zara could see him mentally reviewing their entire relationship, looking for clues he'd missed. There had been many her familiarity with complex business concepts, her ability to spot problems in his company structure, her connections with people in the tech world, but Alexander had been too self-absorbed to pay attention. "You've been lying to me for 5 years, he said, his voice shaking with either rage or fear. "I withheld information to protect myself, which turned out to be a very smart decision." Zara stood up slowly, her pregnancy making quick movements difficult. "You, on the other hand, have been actively lying to me for 8 months while stealing money from your company to fund an affair with a woman young enough to be your daughter." Alexander's face flushed red. How did I find out about Natasha Vale? Security cameras, bank records, and the fact that you're not nearly as clever as you think you are." She walked to the window, looking out at the garden where she'd once imagined their child playing. "Did you really think you could embezzle company funds without anyone noticing? I wasn't embezzling. I was borrowing against future profits." "You were stealing, Alexander. From Patterson Industries, which means you were stealing from Richardson Chin-Tech's investment fund. My family's money has been keeping your company afloat for years, and you've been using it to buy jewelry for your mistress." The color drained from Alexander's face as the full implications hit him. "Richardson Chin invested in my company? We saved your company from bankruptcy 5 years ago. Those mysterious investors who bought 40% of Patterson Industries when you were about to lose everything? That was us. We've been your silent partners this entire time, watching our investment, making sure our money was being used responsibly." Alexander sank into the couch, his head in his hands. "This can't be happening." "Oh, it's just beginning." Zara turned back to face him, her expression merciless. "As of today, Richardson Chin-Tech is calling in our loans to Patterson Industries. You have 30 days to pay back the $200 million we've invested in your company, plus interest." $200 million? That's impossible. The company doesn't have that kind of liquid cash. Then you'll have to sell. Lucky for you, I'm prepared to make an offer for the entire company. $50 million, which is generous considering the financial state you've left it in. $50 million? The company is worth 10 times that. Not anymore. Not after the SEC investigation goes public tomorrow. Not after your investors learn that their CEO has been stealing company funds for personal use. Not after every major client discovers that Patterson Industries is under federal investigation for fraud. Alexander looked up at her with dawning horror. "You planned all this?" I plan to protect myself and my child from a man who thinks he can discard his family like garbage. Zara's voice was ice cold now. You wanted a divorce, Alexander? Congratulations. You're getting one. But you're not getting the sweet deal you thought you negotiated in that prenup. The prenup is void. You committed adultery and corporate fraud, both of which invalidate our agreement completely. My lawyers are very thorough. She moved toward the stairs, ready to pack the few personal items she actually cared about. You have until Friday to vacate this house. It was purchased with Richardson Chin funds, so it belongs to me. Zara, wait. Alexander jumped up, suddenly looking desperate. We can work this out. I made some mistakes, but we're having a baby together. We can fix this. She paused on the stairs, looking down at him with the same expression she might use to examine something unpleasant on the bottom of her shoe. Fix what exactly? The 8 months of lies? The stolen money? The fact that you were planning to abandon your pregnant wife for a 23-year-old model? I wasn't going to abandon you. I would have supported the baby. Through your company's money? The same money you've been stealing to buy Natasha's affection? Zara shook her head. You made your choice, Alexander. Now you get to live with the consequences. Please just give me a chance to explain. Explain to your lawyers. I have nothing more to say to you. She continued up the stairs, leaving Alexander standing alone in the living room that would soon no longer be his. As she packed her clothes, Zara felt a strange sense of liberation. For 5 years she'd hidden her true self, dimmed her light to make Alexander feel more important. She'd let him take credit for business insights she'd provided, had pretended to be impressed by his achievements when she could have bought his entire company with her monthly allowance. But those days were over. Tomorrow the world would learn that Alexander Patterson was a fraud and a thief. His company would collapse, his reputation would be destroyed, and his young mistress would undoubtedly move on to someone with a more secure financial future. Meanwhile, Zara Richardson Chin would emerge from the shadows, revealing herself as one of the most powerful women in technology, a single mother who'd built an empire while playing the perfect wife to a man who never deserved her. Her baby kicked and she smiled for the first time in months. Don't worry, little one, she whispered. Mommy's going to make sure you grow up in a world where people can't take advantage of us ever again. The war was far from over, but the first battle was won. Alexander was about to discover that revenge, when served by someone with unlimited resources and nothing left to lose, was a dish best served with complete and total destruction. 2 days after serving Alexander with divorce papers, Zara sat in the executive boardroom of Richardson Chin Tech's headquarters in Palo Alto, surrounded by the most powerful legal and financial minds in Silicon Valley. Her pregnancy was now clearly visible, but instead of making her appear vulnerable, it seemed to enhance her authority. Here was a woman who could command a $50 billion empire while carrying a child. Status report, she said simply, her hands folded on the polished conference table. Michael Torres, her head of acquisitions, opened his tablet. We now control 38% of Patterson Industries through various shell companies and investment funds. The emergency board meeting is set for Monday morning, where they'll vote on our buyout offer. What's the mood of the other board members? Panicked. The SEC investigation went public yesterday, and every major investor is demanding answers. 3 board members have already called requesting private meetings with Richardson Chin representatives. Michael smiled grimly. They know Alexander is finished, but they're trying to save their own investments. Patricia Wong leaned forward from her position at Zara's right hand. Alexander's personal attorney called this morning. He wants to negotiate a settlement that avoids criminal charges for the embezzlement. Absolutely not, Zara's voice was sharp. He made this bed when he chose to steal from us to fund his affair. He can lie in it. Dr. Sarah Kim, Zara's longtime friend and Richardson Chin's chief technology officer, spoke up from across the table. I've been monitoring the tech blogs and financial news. The story is gaining traction faster than we expected. Someone leaked details about the offshore accounts and the money trail to Natasha Vale. Zara raised an eyebrow. Someone? Sarah smiled innocently. Anonymous sources can be very helpful sometimes. The door opened and Zara's assistant entered with a tablet. Ma'am, you need to see this. It's trending on social media. The screen showed a video that made Zara's blood boil. Alexander stood outside Patterson Industries headquarters, surrounded by reporters, putting on the performance of his life. He looked haggard and remorseful, playing the part of a man who'd made mistakes but was trying to do right by his family. I want to publicly apologize to my wife, Zara, for the pain I've caused, Alexander said to the cameras, his voice breaking at just the right moments. I made serious errors in judgment, both personal and professional. I'm committed to making things right and saving our marriage for the sake of our unborn child. What about the embezzlement charges? A reporter shouted. Those are allegations that my legal team is addressing. What matters now is that I focus on being the husband and father my family deserves. Zara muted the video, her jaw clenched. He's trying to control the narrative. Make himself look like a man who made mistakes but is willing to change. It won't work, Patricia said confidently. Not when the financial evidence is this clear. But it shows he's not going to go quietly. Then we make sure he goes loudly and publicly, Zara replied. Michael, accelerate the takeover timeline. I want control of Patterson Industries by end of week. That's aggressive but doable. The board is desperate enough that they'll take any reasonable offer to avoid complete collapse. Sarah, I need you to reach out to your contacts at TechCrunch, Wired, and Forbes. I'm ready to give my first interview as Zara Richardson Chin, and I want to tell the real story of what happened. Dr. Kim's eyes lit up. The tech world has been speculating about your identity for years. When they learned that the mysterious Z Chin, who revolutionized cloud computing architecture, is actually the woman Alexander Patterson betrayed, it's going to be the biggest story of the year. That's the idea. I want everyone to understand exactly who Alexander thought he could discard. Zara stood up, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. This isn't just about revenge anymore. It's about showing every woman who's been underestimated or betrayed that we don't have to suffer in silence. Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. We need to talk. This doesn't have to get uglier. Zara showed the message to Patricia, who shook her head. He's getting desperate. That's when men like him become dangerous. He can't hurt me anymore, Zara replied. I have resources, security, and most importantly, I have the truth on my side. The meeting continued for another hour, finalizing the details of the takeover and Zara's media strategy. By the time she left the Richardson building, her plan was set in motion like a precision military operation. That evening, Zara returned to the hotel suite she'd been staying in since leaving the mansion. She'd chosen the penthouse at the Four Seasons, which offered both luxury and security. As she settled into bed with her laptop, she began writing what would become the most read article in business journalism that year. Her phone rang, Alexander calling again. She'd been ignoring his calls and texts for 2 days, but something made her answer this time. Zara, thank God. We need to talk face to face. This has gone too far. His voice was strained, desperate in a way she'd never heard before. Has it? Because from where I'm sitting, this is exactly as far as it needs to go. You're destroying innocent people. The Patterson Industries employees, the investors who trusted me, they don't deserve to lose everything because of my personal mistakes. You're right, they don't. That's why Richardson Tech will be offering jobs to every qualified Patterson Industries employee once the takeover is complete. As for the investors, they should have done better due diligence before trusting a man who steals from his own company. Zara, please. I know I hurt you, but I love you. I want to save our marriage. The words that might have meant everything to her just weeks ago now sounded hollow and manipulative. You love me? Is that why you were planning to divorce me to marry your 23-year-old mistress? That was a mistake. I wasn't thinking clearly. Natasha means nothing to me compared to you and our baby. Natasha means nothing to you? Does she know that? Because according to the private investigator I hired, you promised to marry her as soon as the divorce was final. You even put a down payment on a ring. Silence on the other end of the line. That's what I thought, Zara continued. You don't love me, Alexander. You never did. You loved the idea of having a beautiful wife who made you look successful while staying in the background. But you never actually saw me. If you had, you might have realized that discarding Zara Richardson was the stupidest mistake any man could ever make. It doesn't have to end like this. We can work together to rebuild Patterson Industries. Your family's company and mine, working as partners. We were partners, Alexander. For 5 years, I was your silent partner, helping your company succeed while you took all the credit. But partners don't steal from each other, and they don't lie to each other, and they definitely don't betray each other with supermodels young enough to be their daughters. I made mistakes. You made choices. Every lie, every theft, every moment with her was a choice you made. Now you get to live with the consequences. She hung up and immediately blocked his number. Tomorrow the business world would learn the truth about Alexander Patterson, and more importantly, they'd learn the truth about her. Her laptop chimed with a notification from Sarah Kim. Forbes wants to do a cover story. The secret billionaire, How tech heiress Zara Richardson Chin brought down her cheating husband's empire. They're offering prime placement and full editorial control. Zara smiled and typed back, schedule it. It's time the world met the real Mrs. Patterson. As she drifted off to sleep that night, Zara felt her baby move, as if responding to her mother's sense of purpose. Soon she would be a single mother running a technology empire, but she would never again be underestimated or betrayed. Alexander had awakened a force he never knew existed, and tomorrow that force would reshape both their lives forever. The Forbes cover story hit newsstands and digital platforms on Thursday morning, and by noon, it had broken the internet. The image showed Zara in a sharp business suit, her pregnant profile elegant and powerful, standing in front of the Richardson Chin Tech logo. The headline read, "The $50 billion Secret, How Alexander Patterson's Wife Became His Biggest Enemy." Zara watched the story explode across social media from her temporary office at Richardson Chin headquarters. Her phone hadn't stopped ringing since 6 a.m., with calls from reporters, investors, and business leaders who couldn't believe what they were reading. Patterson Industries stock is down 60% in pre-market trading, Michael Torres reported, bursting into her office with his tablet. 3 major clients have already pulled their contracts, and the bank is calling in their loans. Dr. Sarah Kim looked up from her laptop, grinning. Twitter is going insane. Hashtag Zara Richardson Chin is trending worldwide. Everyone's sharing quotes from your interview about how women shouldn't have to hide their power to make men comfortable. The Forbes interview had been devastating in its calm precision. Zara had laid out the entire story, how she'd hidden her identity, supported Alexander's career, discovered his betrayal, and decided to take back control of her life. She'd included bank records, security footage timestamps, and financial documents that painted a clear picture of Alexander's crimes. But the most powerful part of the article was Zara's personal reflection on what it meant to be a woman in business, particularly a woman who'd been trained from childhood to dim her light so others could shine. "I spent 5 years pretending to be less intelligent, less capable, and less successful than I actually was," she told the reporter. "I thought I was protecting my marriage by making my husband feel important. Instead, I was enabling a man who saw me as disposable the moment something newer and shinier came along." Her assistant knocked and entered with another update. "Ma'am, Patterson Industries just lost the Melbourne account. That's $20 million in annual revenue." "How many clients is that now?" Zara asked. 7 major accounts canceled in the past 4 hours. The remaining clients are demanding meetings to discuss continuity concerns. Her assistant smiled. Also, Natasha Vale's publicist released a statement distancing her from Mr. Patterson. Apparently, she's now dating a tech entrepreneur from Austin. Zara felt a moment of dark satisfaction. Alexander's young mistress had abandoned him the moment his financial situation became public. The woman he'd destroyed his marriage for had proven to be exactly as superficial as Zara had suspected. "There's more," Sarah said, pulling up another news story. "The FBI raided Patterson Industries this morning. They seized all financial records and Alexander's personal computers." The door opened and Patricia Wong entered, her expression grim but satisfied. "I just got off the phone with the federal prosecutor. They're formally charging Alexander with embezzlement, wire fraud, and tax evasion. The offshore accounts contained $8 million that can be directly traced to company funds." "What's the potential sentence?" Zara asked. "If convicted on all charges? 15 to 20 years in federal prison." The room fell silent as the weight of that information settled. Zara had started this journey wanting to expose Alexander's betrayal and protect her assets. She hadn't expected it to end with her husband facing decades in prison. "Are you having second thoughts?" Patricia asked gently. Zara thought about the question seriously. Was this too much? Had her desire for justice become a quest for destruction? Then she remembered the security footage of Alexander showing Natasha their baby's ultrasound photos. She remembered him lying to her face while she carried his child. She remembered the casual cruelty with which he'd planned to discard her for a younger model. "No," she said firmly. "He made these choices. Every stolen dollar, every lie, every moment with her while I was home pregnant with his baby, those were his decisions. I'm not responsible for the consequences of his actions." Her phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. "Please meet me at the house. I need to explain everything." Zara showed the message to Patricia, who immediately shook her head. "Absolutely not. He's desperate, and desperate men do unpredictable things. He can't hurt me. I have security, and besides, what's he going to do? His assets are frozen, his company is collapsing, and his mistress has moved on to someone with better prospects. Still, I don't like it. If you're determined to see him, do it in a public place with witnesses. Zara considered this, then typed back, coffee shop on Melrose. 1 hour. Come alone. An hour later, Zara sat in a corner booth at a busy cafe, her security team positioned discreetly around the room. When Alexander walked in, she barely recognized him. The confident, perfectly groomed CEO had been replaced by a man who looked like he hadn't slept in days. His expensive suit was wrinkled, his hair uncombed, and his eyes had the desperate look of a cornered animal. He slid into the booth across from her, his hands shaking as he tried to compose himself. "Thank you for coming." "You have 10 minutes, Zara said coldly. "I know you hate me right now and I deserve it. But I need you to understand that I never meant for things to go this far." "Which things? The affair, the embezzlement, or planning to divorce your pregnant wife?" Alexander flinched. "All of it. I made terrible decisions, but I was under so much pressure. The company was struggling, Natasha was demanding more and more expensive things, and I felt trapped. So you decided to steal from your own company to keep your mistress happy while lying to your pregnant wife about working late. It wasn't supposed to be stealing. I was going to pay it back once the company turned around. I just needed time." Zara stared at him with something approaching pity. "Do you even hear yourself? You're still making excuses, still trying to justify the unjustifiable." "I'm trying to save our marriage. We're having a baby together, Zara. That has to count for something." "It counted for everything to me. That's why this hurts so much." Zara leaned forward, her voice dropping to barely above a whisper. "I would have given you anything, Alexander. I would have saved your company with my family's money, helped you build something amazing together, supported you through any crisis. All you had to do was be honest with me. I can still be that man. Give me another chance and I'll prove it to you. You had your chance. You had 5 years of chances and you chose to lie, steal, and cheat instead of trusting your wife with the truth." Alexander's composure finally cracked completely. "You're going to destroy me. My company, my reputation, my freedom. You're taking everything." "I'm taking what was never really yours in the first place. The company was built on my family's investment. Your reputation was built on lies. And your freedom? You traded that away the moment you decided to commit federal crimes. What about our baby? You're going to make our child grow up with a father in prison?" The question hit harder than Zara expected, but she forced herself to stay strong. "Our child is going to grow up knowing that actions have consequences, that betraying people who love you isn't acceptable, and that no one, not even their father, is above the law." Alexander stared at her for a long moment, then seemed to deflate completely. "I loved you, you know. I really did." "No, you didn't. You loved the idea of me. You loved having a beautiful wife who made you look successful while never challenging your ego. But you never actually loved me enough to be honest with me, trust me, or stay faithful to me." She stood up, her hand instinctively moving to her belly. "Goodbye, Alexander. Don't contact me again unless it's through your lawyer." As she walked away, Zara heard him call out, "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry." But the apology was 5 months too late and about $8 million short. Outside the cafe, her driver was waiting with the car. As they pulled away, Zara saw Alexander through the window, still sitting in the booth with his head in his hands, finally understanding that his old life was completely over. Her phone buzzed with a message from Michael Torres. "Patterson Industries board voted unanimously to accept our buyout offer. Congratulations, boss. You now own your ex-husband's company." Zara smiled for the first time all day. The takeover was complete, but more importantly, she'd proven to herself that she was strong enough to stand up for herself and her child. Tomorrow she would begin rebuilding Patterson Industries into something worthy of the Richardson Chin name. But tonight, she would go home to her hotel suite and start planning the future she was going to build for herself and her baby, a future where no one would ever underestimate Zara Richardson Chin again. Monday morning brought news that sent shockwaves through the business world. Federal agents had arrested Alexander Patterson at his Beverly Hills mansion at 6 a.m., charging him with 12 counts of wire fraud, embezzlement, and tax evasion. The perp walk footage, showing Alexander in handcuffs being led to a federal vehicle, played on every major news network. Zara watched from her new office at the former Patterson Industries headquarters, now officially renamed Richardson Chin West Coast Operations. The irony wasn't lost on her. She was now sitting in the executive suite where Alexander had conducted his affair, making decisions about the company he'd built with her family's money. "The media coverage is unprecedented," Sarah Kim reported, scrolling through news feeds on her tablet. Every major business publication is calling this the biggest corporate scandal since Enron. The fact that you're pregnant while taking down your cheating husband has captured everyone's imagination. TMZ is calling it Revenge of the Tech Princess, added Michael Torres with a grin. Which is terrible, but the sentiment isn't wrong. Zara's assistant knocked and entered. "Ma'am, there's a woman here to see you. She says her name is Natasha Vale." The room fell silent. After everything that had happened, Alexander's former mistress had the audacity to show up at Zara's office. "Should I have security escort her out?" the assistant asked. Zara considered for a moment. She was curious about what the woman who'd helped destroy her marriage could possibly want to say. "No. Show her in. But have security remain close." 2 minutes later, Natasha Vale walked into Zara's office, and immediately, Zara understood why Alexander had lost his mind. The 23-year-old was breathtakingly beautiful, with the kind of effortless glamour that graced magazine covers. But there was something else in her eyes: fear. "Mrs. Patterson. I mean Mrs. Richardson Chin," Natasha began, her voice heavily accented and shaking slightly. "Thank you for seeing me. What do you want?" Zara asked coldly, not offering her a seat. "I want to apologize. And I want to explain." "Explain what?" "How you helped my husband steal money from his company to buy you expensive gifts. How you encouraged him to divorce his pregnant wife. I think I understand the situation perfectly." Natasha's perfect composure cracked slightly. "You don't understand. Alexander told me you were separated. He said you were getting divorced anyway, that you had both agreed the marriage was over." Zara raised an eyebrow. "And you believed him?" "He showed me legal papers. He said you were just waiting until after the baby was born to make it official to avoid stress during the pregnancy." For the first time since this whole ordeal began, Zara felt a flicker of sympathy for someone other than herself. Alexander had manipulated Natasha just as thoroughly as he'd manipulated her, albeit in different ways. "The legal papers were fake," Zara said quietly. "I found out about the affair through security footage. Up until that moment, I had no idea our marriage was in trouble." Natasha sank into the chair across from Zara's desk without being invited, her face pale. "He lied to me about everything. That's what Alexander does. He lies to get what he wants, then lies more to cover up the first lies. I never would have gotten involved if I'd known the truth. I'm not a homewrecker. My own parents divorced because of an affair, and I swore I'd never be the other woman." Zara studied the young woman across from her. Despite everything, she found herself believing Natasha's remorse was genuine. "Why are you telling me this now?" "Because I feel responsible for what happened to you. And because I need you to know that I never asked Alexander to steal money from me. I had no idea where the gifts were coming from." "You thought a CEO was just naturally generous with his mistress?" Natasha's cheeks flushed. "I thought he was wealthy enough that expensive gifts didn't matter to him. I grew up poor in Brazil. When rich men buy you things, you don't ask questions about their accounting methods." The honesty was startling, and Zara found herself reassessing her assumptions about the woman who'd helped destroy her marriage. "What do you want from me?" Zara asked. "Nothing. I just wanted to apologize and to tell you that I testified to the FBI about everything I knew. Every gift, every trip, every lie Alexander told me about your marriage." Natasha stood up, her hands shaking. "I know my apology doesn't fix anything, but I needed you to hear it." As Natasha turned to leave, Zara called out, "Wait." The young woman turned back, hope and fear warring in her expression. "For what it's worth, I believe you didn't know the whole truth. Alexander is very good at making people believe what he wants them to believe." Natasha nodded, tears starting to form in her eyes. "I'm moving back to Brazil next week. I can't stay in this country knowing what I helped happen to your family." After Natasha left, Zara sat alone in her office, processing the conversation. She'd expected to feel more anger, more hatred toward the woman who'd been with her husband. Instead, she felt something closer to pity. Natasha had been used just as much as Zara had been, just in different ways. Her phone buzzed with a news alert. "Breaking. Supermodel Natasha Vale testifies against Alexander Patterson in federal fraud case." Within hours, every detail of Natasha's testimony had leaked to the press. She provided financial records, text messages, and recorded conversations that painted a devastating picture of Alexander's manipulation and fraud. The evidence was so damning that legal experts were predicting Alexander would plead guilty to avoid an even harsher sentence. That evening, Zara worked late in her new office, reviewing plans for the company's restructuring. Richardson Chin West Coast would focus on sustainable technology and ethical business practices, everything Alexander's version had failed to be. Her assistant knocked around 8 p.m. "Ma'am, there's a call for you." Someone claiming to be Alexander's mother. Zara had met Eleanor Patterson only a few times during her marriage. Alexander's relationship with his family was complicated, and he'd kept them at arm's length from his business and personal life. "Mrs. Richardson Chin," Eleanor's voice was strained but dignified. "I know you have every right to hang up on me, but I need to say something." "I'm listening." "I want to apologize for my son's behavior. What he did to you and your unborn child is unforgivable. I raised him better than this, but somewhere along the way he lost his moral compass." Zara was surprised by the sincerity in the older woman's voice. "Thank you for saying that. I also want you to know that Alexander's father and I support whatever consequences he faces. We love our son, but we won't enable his behavior or make excuses for his crimes." "I appreciate your honesty. There's something else. Alexander asked me to call you to beg you to drop the charges or ask for leniency. I told him absolutely not. He made his choices, and now he has to face the consequences like a man." The conversation continued for a few more minutes, with Eleanor expressing her hopes that Zara and the baby would be happy and healthy despite everything that had happened. When she hung up, Zara felt a strange sense of closure. Her phone buzzed with a text from her doctor. "Lab results look great. Baby is healthy and strong. Just like mom." Zara smiled, placing her hand on her belly. Through all the chaos and betrayal, her baby had remained healthy and safe. In a few more months, she would be holding her child, a child who would grow up knowing that their mother was strong enough to fight for what was right. The next morning brought news that Alexander had indeed decided to plead guilty to avoid trial. His sentencing was scheduled for the following month, and prosecutors were recommending 12 years in federal prison. 12 years. By the time Alexander was released, his child would be in middle school, and Zara would have built an entirely new life. She'd gotten her revenge, but more importantly, she'd gotten her freedom. The woman who'd hidden her identity and dimmed her light for 5 years was gone forever, replaced by someone who would never again underestimate her own worth. As she looked out the window of her corner office at the city sprawling below, Zara felt something she hadn't experienced in months: genuine excitement about the future. She was going to be an amazing mother, a successful CEO, and living proof that some women don't just survive betrayal, they use it as fuel to build something better than they ever imagined possible. The federal courthouse in downtown Los Angeles was packed with reporters, photographers, and curious onlookers as Alexander Patterson's sentencing hearing began. Zara sat in the front row of the gallery, 8 months pregnant now, her presence commanding attention from everyone in the room. She wore a navy blue maternity dress that was both professional and dignified. She wanted to look like the successful businesswoman she was, not a victim seeking sympathy. Alexander entered the courtroom in an orange jumpsuit, his hands shackled, looking nothing like the confident CEO who'd once commanded boardrooms and charity galas. His expensive haircut had grown out, his face was pale from months in custody, and his eyes darted nervously around the room before landing on Zara. For a moment, their gazes met across the courtroom. Zara saw regret, desperation, and something that might have been love in his expression. But it was too late for any of those emotions to matter. Judge Patricia Miranda called the court to order and reviewed the charges. Alexander had pleaded guilty to 12 counts of wire fraud, embezzlement of over $8 million, and tax evasion. The evidence had been overwhelming, and his plea deal had been the only way to avoid spending the rest of his life in prison. "Before I impose sentence," Judge Miranda said, "I'll hear from the victims. Mrs. Richardson Chin, you may proceed." Zara stood slowly, her pregnancy making movement more difficult, but her voice was strong and clear as she approached the podium. "Your Honor, my name is Zara Richardson Chin, and I am the primary victim of Alexander Patterson's crimes. When I married this man 5 years ago, I believed I was entering a partnership built on love, trust, and mutual respect. Instead, I discovered that my husband saw me as nothing more than a convenient accessory to his image." She paused, looking directly at Alexander, who was staring at his hands. "For 8 months, while I carried his child, Alexander Patterson systematically betrayed our marriage, stole from his company, and planned to abandon his family for a woman young enough to be his daughter. He used money stolen from Richardson Chin Tech, my family's company, to fund an affair that he believed would lead to a better life." Zara's voice remained steady, but there was steel beneath the surface. "Mr. Patterson's crimes weren't just financial, Your Honor. He stole my trust, my sense of security, and my faith in the man I'd promised to spend my life with. He made me question my own worth and my ability to judge character. Most importantly, he forced me to face the prospect of raising our child alone while he built a new life with someone else. Several reporters in the gallery were frantically taking notes, and Zara could see camera phones pointed in her direction despite the court's rules against recording. I want the court to understand that I am not here seeking revenge, though I know that's how this story has been portrayed in the media. I am here seeking justice for myself, for our unborn child, and for every woman who has been betrayed by someone they trusted completely. Alexander finally looked up at her, tears streaming down his face, but Zara continued without acknowledging his emotional display. Mr. Patterson's actions have consequences that extend far beyond this courtroom. Richardson Shintech has had to spend millions of dollars in legal fees and security measures. Former Patterson Industries employees faced uncertainty about their jobs and pensions. Investors lost money because they trusted a man who was stealing from his own company. Zara paused, taking a breath before delivering her conclusion. I believe in second chances, Your Honor, but I also believe that people must face the full consequences of their choices. Alexander Patterson chose to lie, steal, and betray the people who trusted him most. He chose to risk everything for a temporary affair. He chose to put his family's future in jeopardy for his own selfish desires. She looked at Alexander one final time. I hope that during his incarceration Mr. Patterson will find a way to become the man our child deserves as a father. But until that day comes, I believe he needs to face the consequences of the choices he made. Zara returned to her seat as Alexander's lawyer stood to make a plea for leniency. The attorney painted a picture of a man who'd made mistakes under pressure, who was deeply remorseful and committed to making amends. But the financial evidence was too damaging, and Alexander's pattern of deception too extensive, for the plea to carry much weight. When Alexander himself was given the opportunity to speak, he stood on shaking legs and turned toward Zara. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, and I know my apology can't undo the pain I've caused. But I want you to know that I loved you, Zara. I loved you more than I've ever loved anyone, and I threw it all away because I was weak and selfish and stupid. His voice broke completely. I know I'll never get another chance with you, but I hope someday you can help our child understand that their father isn't entirely evil, just incredibly foolish. I hope you can build the amazing life you deserve, and I hope our baby grows up knowing how incredible their mother is. Judge Miranda listened to everything with the patience of someone who'd heard similar pleas countless times before. When it came time for sentencing, her voice was firm and clear. Mr. Patterson, you held a position of trust as a CEO and as a husband. You betrayed that trust in the most fundamental ways possible. You stole from your company, you lied to federal investigators, and you used your position to fund a lifestyle of deception and adultery. She reviewed the sentencing guidelines and the evidence presented. While I acknowledge your guilty plea and expressions of remorse, I must also consider the extensive nature of your crimes and their impact on the victims. You are hereby sentenced to 14 years in federal prison, followed by 3 years of supervised probation. You are also ordered to pay full restitution to Richardson Shintech in the amount of $12.3 million. The gavel came down with finality, and Alexander's shoulders sagged in defeat. 14 years meant he would miss his child's entire elementary and middle school years. By the time he was released, his son or daughter would be in high school. As the bailiffs led Alexander away, he looked back at Zara one last time. She met his gaze without emotion, her hand resting protectively on her belly. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed around Zara as she made her way to her car. She paused at the microphones that had been set up on the courthouse steps. I want to thank the federal prosecutors, the FBI investigators, and Judge Miranda for ensuring that justice was served today, she said calmly. This case was never about revenge. It was about accountability and ensuring that no one, regardless of their position or wealth, is above the law. A reporter shouted out, "What's next for you and Richardson Shintech?" We're focused on building ethical, sustainable technology that makes the world better. We're also committed to supporting women in business and ensuring that female entrepreneurs have the resources they need to succeed without having to hide their capabilities. Any message for other women who might be facing similar betrayals? Zara paused, thinking about all the women who'd reached out to her since her story became public, wives who'd discovered affairs, businesswomen who'd been underestimated, mothers facing single parenthood after betrayal. Your worth isn't determined by how others treat you. You don't have to make yourself smaller to make others comfortable. And you never have to accept betrayal or abuse in silence. There are people who will support you, resources available to help you, and legal systems that will protect your rights if you're brave enough to stand up for yourself. As her driver opened the car door, one last reporter called out, "Do you regret marrying Alexander Patterson?" Zara placed her hand on her belly, feeling her baby move in response to her touch. "I don't regret anything that led me to this moment," she said simply. "I'm about to become a mother, I'm running a company I love, and I've learned that I'm stronger than I ever imagined. Some lessons are worth the pain they cost to learn." That evening, Zara sat in the nursery of her new home, a beautiful house in Malibu that overlooked the ocean. She'd furnished the room in soft blues and greens, with toys and books that would welcome her child into a world of possibilities. Her phone rang, her mother calling from Colorado. "I watched the sentencing on the news," Catherine Richardson said. "I'm proud of you for handling everything with such dignity." "Thanks, Mom. It's finally over." "No, sweetheart. It's finally beginning. You're about to start the most amazing chapter of your life." As Zara hung up the phone and prepared for bed, she reflected on how dramatically her life had changed in just 6 months. She'd gone from hiding her identity as a supportive wife to becoming one of the most powerful women in technology. She'd gone from believing her marriage was solid to discovering the depths of betrayal and finding the strength to fight back. Most importantly, she was about to become a mother. In a few weeks, she would hold her child for the first time, and together they would build a life built on honesty, strength, and the knowledge that they could overcome anything. Alexander would spend the next 14 years in prison, but Zara would spend those same years watching her child grow up, building her business empire, and proving that sometimes the best revenge is simply living an amazing life. The final strike had been delivered and justice had been served. Now it was time to focus on the future. 3 years later, Zara pushed her daughter Emma's stroller through the farmer's market in Santa Monica, enjoying the simple pleasure of a Saturday morning without business meetings or conference calls. At 3 years old, Emma was a perfect blend of both parents. She had Alexander's dark hair but Zara's determined personality and curious nature. "Mama, flowers?" Emma pointed excitedly at a vendor's colorful display of sunflowers and roses. "They're beautiful, aren't they?" Zara knelt down to Emma's level. "What color do you like best?" "Yellow. Like sunshine." Zara bought a small bouquet of yellow flowers, letting Emma hold them carefully as they continued their walk. It was moments like these that reminded her how much her life had improved since the divorce. The constant stress and anxiety of living with Alexander's lies had been replaced by the pure joy of raising her daughter and building a business empire on her own terms. Richardson West Coast had become one of the most successful tech companies in California, specializing in sustainable energy solutions and artificial intelligence for healthcare. Zara had proven that she could run a company just as effectively as any CEO, perhaps more so because she led with both intelligence and empathy. "Zara? Is that you?" She turned to see Dr. Marcus Thompson approaching with his own daughter, a girl about Emma's age. Marcus was a pediatric surgeon at Cedars-Sinai, someone Zara had met 6 months ago when Emma had needed her tonsils removed. What started as a professional relationship had slowly developed into friendship, and recently, something that felt like it might become more. "Marcus, hi. This is Emma and Emma. This is Dr. Thompson and his daughter Sophie." The two girls immediately started chattering about their respective toys while the adults talked. "How's the recovery going?" Marcus asked, his professional concern mixing with personal interest. "She's completely healed. Back to her usual tornado of energy." Zara smiled as she watched Emma and Sophie examine a butterfly that had landed on Sophie's stroller. "That's great to hear. Listen, I was wondering if you'd like to have dinner sometime. Just the two of us, not at a hospital cafeteria surrounded by medical emergencies." Zara felt a flutter of nervousness she hadn't experienced in years. Dating as a single mother felt complicated, especially when her ex-husband's story was still referenced in business magazines as one of the biggest corporate scandals of the decade. "I'd like that," she said, surprising herself with how much she meant it. "Really? Great. How about Saturday night? I know a great Italian place that's very quiet and private." As they exchanged phone numbers, Zara felt something she thought she might never experience again: genuine excitement about getting to know someone new. Marcus was kind, intelligent, and most importantly, he treated her like a complete person rather than just a business success story or a scandal survivor. That evening, after putting Emma to bed, Zara sat in her home office reviewing quarterly reports for Richardson. The company's profits had increased by 40% over the past year, and they just signed a major contract to provide sustainable energy solutions for 3 major hospital systems. Her assistant had left a stack of interview requests on her desk. Forbes wanted to do a follow-up story on her success, and several business schools had invited her to speak about entrepreneurship and recovering from betrayal. She'd become something of an icon for women in business, though she still sometimes felt uncomfortable with the attention. Her phone buzzed with a text from her lawyer Patricia Wong. Thought you should know Alexander is up for early release review next month. His behavior in prison has been exemplary, and he's completed several rehabilitation programs. Zara stared at the message, feeling a complex mix of emotions. Alexander had been sentenced to 14 years, but with good behavior and the rehabilitation programs, he could potentially be released after serving 8 years. That would mean Emma might actually have a relationship with her father while she was still young enough for it to matter. Over the past 3 years, Alexander had written letters to both Zara and Emma, though Zara had only read a few of them. His tone had changed dramatically from the desperate pleading of the early letters to what seemed like genuine remorse and personal growth in the more recent ones. He'd completed his GED in prison, then went on to earn a bachelor's degree in social work. He'd also been leading financial literacy classes for other inmates. Zara had never responded to his letters, but she'd kept them all in a box in her closet, thinking that someday Emma might want to read them and understand her father's journey toward redemption. The question now was whether Alexander had genuinely changed or whether this was just another manipulation. The man she'd married had been capable of extraordinary charm and convincing lies. How could she know if his transformation was real? Her phone rang, her mother calling for their weekly check-in. "How's my granddaughter?" Catherine asked immediately. "She's wonderful. Full of questions about everything. Yesterday she asked me why the sky is blue, and when I explained it she asked why light has different colors and then why we can see colors at all." Zara laughed. "I think we might have a scientist on our hands. She gets that curiosity from both sides of her family. Your father was the same way at that age." They talked about Emma's development, Zara's work, and the various family gatherings being planned for the holidays. Finally, Zara brought up the news about Alexander's possible early release. "What are you thinking?" Catherine asked carefully. "I honestly don't know. Part of me wants to believe people can change, especially for Emma's sake. She deserves to have a father if he's genuinely become a better person. But part of me will never trust him again after what he did to us. You don't have to decide anything right now. If he does get released, you can take things very slowly and see how he handles himself. Supervised visits, public meetings, whatever makes you comfortable." "I know. I just never thought I'd have to make these decisions. When he was sentenced, 14 years felt like forever. I thought Emma would be an adult before I had to worry about Alexander being part of our lives again. The important thing is that you're in control now. You have the resources, the legal protection, and most importantly, you have the strength to handle whatever comes next." After they hung up, Zara wandered into Emma's room and watched her daughter sleep. Emma was strong, smart, and happy, everything Zara had hoped for when she was pregnant and scared about raising a child alone. Whatever happened with Alexander's potential release, Zara knew she could handle it. She'd survived betrayal, public scandal, and single motherhood while building a business empire. She'd learned to trust her own judgment and stand up for herself and her daughter. The next morning brought news that put Alexander's situation into perspective. Richardson Chin had been selected to provide technology infrastructure for a new children's hospital, a project that would directly impact thousands of families. Zara would be working closely with the medical team to ensure the systems were designed with both efficiency and compassion in mind. As she reviewed the project details, Zara realized that her life had become exactly what she'd always wanted it to be: meaningful work that helped people, a daughter who filled her days with joy, and the freedom to make choices based on her own values rather than someone else's expectations. Whether Alexander became part of their lives again remained to be seen. But either way, Zara and Emma would face the future together, strong and unafraid. Her phone buzzed with a text from Marcus. "Looking forward to dinner Saturday. Fair warning, I make terrible jokes when I'm nervous." Zara smiled, typing back, "Lucky for you, I have a 3-year-old, so my standards for humor are pretty low." Maybe it was time to open her heart to new possibilities. She'd spent 3 years healing from betrayal and building a new life. Perhaps now she was ready to trust someone new, someone who saw her strength rather than trying to diminish it. The future stretched ahead of them, full of potential and promise. And for the first time since her marriage ended, Zara felt excited about what tomorrow might bring. 5 years after Alexander's conviction, Zara stood in the boardroom of Richardson Chin Tech's new headquarters in downtown Los Angeles, addressing a room full of investors, journalists, and tech industry leaders. At 33, she had become one of the most influential women in technology, but today's announcement would cement her legacy in an entirely different way. Today, Richardson Chin Tech is proud to announce the launch of the Phoenix Foundation. Zara began, her voice confident and clear. This foundation will provide legal, financial, and emotional support to women who have been victims of domestic financial abuse, corporate fraud by intimate partners, and other forms of economic betrayal. The room erupted in applause. Emma, now 5 years old, sat in the front row next to Zara's mother, wearing a tiny business suit that made her look like a miniature executive. She clapped enthusiastically, though she probably didn't fully understand why everyone was so excited. The Phoenix Foundation will offer free legal representation, temporary housing, childcare support, and business development loans to help women rebuild their lives after financial betrayal. Because I learned firsthand that sometimes the people we trust most are the ones who can hurt us the deepest, but I also learned that we don't have to stay down. After the presentation, Zara mingled with the crowd, discussing the foundation's goals and accepting congratulations from colleagues and friends. Marcus approached with Sophie, who had become Emma's best friend over the past 2 years. "I'm proud of you," he said quietly, squeezing her hand. "This is going to change thousands of lives. That's the goal. I want other women to know they don't have to go through what I went through alone." Marcus had become a constant presence in their lives over the past 18 months. Their relationship had developed slowly and carefully, built on friendship, mutual respect, and genuine affection. He'd proven himself to be patient with Emma, supportive of Zara's career, and completely trustworthy in ways that Alexander never had been. "Speaking of changing lives," Marcus said, his voice taking on a nervous quality that Zara had learned to recognize. "I was wondering if we could talk later tonight, after the girls are asleep." Zara raised an eyebrow, intrigued by his sudden nervousness. "Of course. Everything okay?" "Everything's perfect. That's what I want to talk about." As the reception wound down, Zara's assistant approached with a concerned expression. "Ma'am, there's someone here who insists on speaking with you." Security tried to turn him away, but he says it's urgent and personal. "Who is it?" "He says his name is Alexander Patterson." The noise of the reception seemed to fade into background static as Zara processed this information. Alexander had been released from federal prison 6 months ago, but she'd made it clear through her lawyers that he was not to contact her or Emma directly without going through proper legal channels. "Where is he?" "Security has him waiting in the lobby." "Should I have them escort him out?" Zara looked across the room at Emma, who was showing Sophie her new foundation pin and explaining why her mommy was helping sad ladies become happy again. After 5 years, Emma had no memories of her father and no understanding of why he wasn't part of their lives. "No. Put him in conference room B. I'll see him for exactly 5 minutes." Marcus noticed her sudden tension. "What's wrong?" "Alexander's here. Do you want me to stay close?" "Yes, but don't come in unless I call for you. This is something I need to handle myself." Conference room B was a small, glass-walled space normally used for private phone calls. Alexander sat at the small table, and Zara was shocked by how much he'd changed. The man who'd once been obsessed with his appearance now looked older, thinner, and somehow smaller than she remembered. He wore a simple gray suit that looked like it had come from a discount store, and his once perfect hair was now streaked with gray. "Hello, Zara. Thank you for seeing me. You have 5 minutes. What do you want?" Alexander looked down at his hands, which were clasped tightly on the table. "I wanted to congratulate you on the foundation. It's an incredible thing you're doing." "You came here to congratulate me?" "I came here to apologize." "Really apologize, not the desperate pleading I did during the trial. I've had 5 years to think about what I did to you, to us, to our daughter. I've had therapy, counseling, and a lot of time to understand how selfish and destructive I was." Zara remained standing, her arms crossed. And I want you to know that I don't expect forgiveness. I don't expect a relationship with Emma if you don't think it's best for her. I don't expect anything from you at all. I just needed you to know that I understand now how much I hurt you, and I'm genuinely sorry." He looked up at her for the first time since she'd entered the room. "I threw away the best thing that ever happened to me because I was weak and selfish and stupid. I cost our daughter her father for the first 5 years of her life because I couldn't appreciate what I had. There's no excuse for any of it." Zara studied his face, looking for signs of the manipulation she'd learned to recognize during their marriage. But all she saw was genuine remorse and something that looked like hard-earned wisdom. "What do you want from me, Alexander?" "Nothing. I just wanted you to know that seeing what you've accomplished, knowing that you've built an amazing life for yourself and Emma, it makes me proud even though I have no right to feel that way. You deserved so much better than what I gave you." "Yes, I did. I know you're with Dr. Thompson now. Emma talks about him in the letters she sends me." Zara's eyes widened. "What letters?" Alexander's face showed surprise. You didn't know? Emma has been writing me letters for the past year. Just little drawings and a few words about her life. I assumed you were helping her. I had no idea. I never wrote back because I didn't want to overstep, but I kept every single drawing. She seems like an amazing little girl. Zara felt a complex mix of emotions. Emma had been seeking connection with her father without Zara even knowing about it. Somehow their 5-year-old daughter had figured out how to contact Alexander on her own. How? My mother has been visiting me in prison and after my release. Apparently, Emma convinced your housekeeper to help her send letters to my mother, who forwarded them to me. This revelation changed everything. Emma wanted a relationship with her father, had been actively seeking one without Zara's knowledge or permission. I should go, Alexander said, standing up. I just wanted you to know that I'm working at a nonprofit now, helping ex-offenders reintegrate into society. I'm not trying to rebuild my old life or compete with what you've built. I just want to be a better person than I was. Alexander, wait. He paused at the door. If Emma wants to meet you, I won't stop it. But it happens on my terms, in my timeline, with supervision until I'm convinced you're genuinely changed. Hope flickered in Alexander's eyes, but he kept his voice steady. Whatever you think is best for her. I'll follow any rules you set. One meeting. Somewhere public with Marcus and me present. If Emma likes you and you prove you can be trusted, maybe we can talk about more. But if you ever lie to her, manipulate her, or put your own interests above hers, you'll never see her again. I understand. Thank you. After Alexander left, Zara sat alone in the conference room for several minutes, processing what had just happened. The man who'd destroyed their marriage through lies and betrayal had just demonstrated more honesty and respect than he'd shown in their entire 5-year marriage. Marcus knocked on the glass door and entered when she waved him in. How are you feeling? He asked, sitting down beside her. Confused. He seems different. Really different. But I don't know if I can trust my judgment when it comes to him. You don't have to decide everything today. Take it slow, trust your instincts, and remember that you're in control now. That evening, after Emma was asleep, Zara sat Marcus down in their living room. Over the past year, he'd essentially moved in with them, and their relationship had become a true partnership built on honesty and mutual support. There's something I need to tell you about the conversation you wanted to have tonight, Marcus began, but Zara held up her hand. Before you say anything, I need to ask you something. How would you feel about Alexander potentially becoming part of Emma's life? Marcus considered the question seriously. If he's genuinely changed and it's what's best for Emma, then I support it. I'm not threatened by her having a relationship with her biological father, especially if it makes her happy. My role in her life isn't dependent on his absence. Even if it complicates our family dynamic? Zara, our family dynamic is built on love, honesty, and commitment. Alexander's presence doesn't change any of that unless we let it. The maturity and security of his response reminded Zara why she'd fallen in love with Marcus. He wasn't competing with Alexander or trying to replace him, he was simply being the steady, trustworthy partner that Emma needed in her life. Now, what did you want to talk about? She asked. Marcus smiled nervously and pulled a small velvet box from his pocket. I wanted to ask if you'd marry me. Not because of Emma, not because of society's expectations, but because I love you and I want to spend the rest of my life proving that some men are worthy of your trust. Zara looked at the ring, a beautiful but understated diamond that reflected her style perfectly, and felt tears welling up in her eyes. Marcus, before you answer, I want you to know that I understand your hesitation about marriage after what you went through. We can take as much time as you need, or we can stay exactly as we are if that makes you more comfortable. I just wanted you to know how I feel. For the first time in her adult life, Zara was being proposed to by a man who valued her strength rather than trying to diminish it, who supported her success rather than resenting it, and who put her daughter's well-being above his own ego. Yes, she said simply. Yes, I'll marry you. As Marcus slipped the ring onto her finger, Zara realized that justice hadn't just been served through Alexander's conviction and imprisonment. True justice was the life she'd built for herself and Emma, the love she'd found with Marcus, and the foundation she was creating to help other women find their own paths to freedom and success. Alexander would always be part of their story, but he was no longer the main character. That role belonged to Zara now, and she intended to make it a story worth telling. 8 years after Alexander's sentencing, Zara stood in the backyard of her Malibu home, watching as Emma, now 11 years old, played soccer with her 7-year-old brother Michael and their father Marcus. The sound of children's laughter mixed with the crash of nearby ocean waves created the kind of perfect family moment that Zara had once thought was impossible. "Mom, did you see that goal?" Emma called out, her face flushed with excitement. "I totally scored on Dad." "I saw it. Beautiful footwork," Zara called back, her hand resting on her growing belly. At 36, she was pregnant with her third child, a daughter they planned to name Catherine after Zara's mother. Alexander sat on the patio beside her, watching his daughter play with a mixture of pride and sadness. Over the past 3 years, he had slowly earned his way back into Emma's life through consistent, honest behavior and genuine dedication to becoming the father she deserved. The process had been difficult for everyone, requiring family therapy, legal agreements, and careful boundaries, but it had ultimately been worth it for Emma's sake. "She's incredible," Alexander said quietly. "You've done an amazing job raising her." "We've done an amazing job," Zara corrected, glancing at Marcus, who was now pretending to be dramatically defeated by Emma's soccer skills. "Emma has 3 parents who love her, and that's made all the difference." It was true. The unconventional family structure had taken time to develop, but it worked because all 3 adults put Emma's needs first. Alexander had visitation rights every other weekend and holidays, always supervised initially but now more relaxed as he'd proven his reliability. Marcus had legally adopted Emma with Alexander's blessing, giving her the security of knowing that both her biological father and the man who'd raised her were committed to her forever. "How's the new job going?" Zara asked. Alexander smiled, and it was genuine rather than the calculated charm she remembered from their marriage. "Great. The nonprofit opened 2 new offices this month, and we're helping over 300 ex-offenders find employment and housing. It's the most meaningful work I've ever done." Alexander now served as executive director of Second Chances, a nonprofit organization he'd founded with support from several tech companies, including Richardson Chin. He made a modest salary, lived in a simple apartment, and had dedicated his life to helping others avoid the mistakes he'd made. "I have some news," Alexander continued, his voice taking on a nervous quality. "I wanted to tell you before I told Emma." Zara raised an eyebrow, immediately alert to any potential complications in their carefully balanced arrangement. "I've been seeing someone. Her name is Rebecca, and she's a social worker at the nonprofit. It's been 6 months now and it's getting serious." Zara studied his face, looking for signs of the old Alexander who'd been capable of such devastating deception. But all she saw was a man who'd learned to be honest about difficult conversations. "Tell me about her." "She's 34, divorced, no children of her own, but she wants them someday. She knows all about my past, including what I did to you and Emma. She's actually read every article about the case because she wanted to understand who she was getting involved with. And she told me that my past doesn't define me, but how I handle my responsibilities going forward will." She's right. Zara found herself genuinely happy for Alexander, which surprised her. 8 years ago, she would have wanted him to spend the rest of his life alone and miserable. Now, seeing how hard he'd worked to become a better person, she wanted him to find happiness as long as it didn't interfere with his relationship with Emma. "When do you want to introduce her to Emma?" "Not for a while. I want to make sure this relationship is solid and permanent before I bring another person into Emma's life. But I wanted you to know so there wouldn't be any surprises." Emma ran over to them, sweaty and exhilarated from the soccer game. "Dad, did you see how I totally dominated Michael? I think I should go pro." "You definitely have the skills," Alexander said, hugging his daughter. "But maybe finish elementary school first?" "Ugh, fine. But only because Mom says education is important." "Your mom is very smart," Alexander replied, glancing at Zara with something that looked like gratitude. Later that evening, after Alexander had left and the children were in bed, Zara and Marcus sat on their bedroom balcony overlooking the ocean. The Phoenix Foundation had grown into a national organization with offices in 12 cities, and Zara had just been named to Forbes' list of most powerful women in business for the 3rd consecutive year. "How are you feeling about Alexander's news?" Marcus asked, his arm around her shoulders. "Good, actually. I think he's genuinely changed, and Emma deserves to have a father who's happy and stable." "You know what I love about you?" Marcus said, kissing the top of her head. "My devastating business acumen?" "That too. But I love that you chose forgiveness over bitterness. A lot of people in your situation would have wanted Alexander to suffer forever." Zara considered this. "I wanted him to suffer for a long time. But watching Emma grow up, seeing how much she benefits from having him in her life as a better person, I realized that my happiness doesn't depend on his misery." Plus, you got the ultimate revenge. Which is, you're living an absolutely amazing life. Successful business, beautiful family, meaningful work that helps thousands of people. Meanwhile, Alexander works at a non-profit, lives in a studio apartment, and drives a 10-year-old Honda Civic. Zara laughed. That does sound pretty satisfying when you put it that way. The next morning brought news that put everything into perspective. Zara's assistant called with information about Patterson Industries, the company that had once been Alexander's pride and joy. The bankruptcy proceedings are finally complete, her assistant reported. The building is being demolished next month to make way for a shopping center. Patterson Industries had collapsed completely after Alexander's conviction. Despite Zara's efforts to save the jobs of innocent employees, the company's reputation never recovered from the scandal. The Richardson-Shin buyout had only lasted 2 years before they decided to shut down operations entirely and absorb the valuable employees into other divisions. Also, there's some interesting news about Natasha Vale, her assistant continued. She just got engaged to that tech entrepreneur from Austin. The wedding is being featured in Vogue. Zara felt a moment of satisfaction knowing that Natasha had found happiness with someone who could actually afford to support her lifestyle legally. The young woman had paid a price for her involvement in the scandal, losing several modeling contracts and facing public scrutiny for her role in the affair. But she'd rebuilt her career and apparently found genuine love with someone age-appropriate and financially stable. That afternoon, Zara drove to downtown Los Angeles for a meeting with city officials about expanding the Phoenix Foundation's services to include financial literacy programs for at-risk youth. As she passed the empty lot where Patterson Industries used to stand, she felt a strange sense of closure. The company that had represented Alexander's ego and ambition was gone, replaced by nothing more than weeds and construction equipment. Meanwhile, the foundation she'd built from the ashes of her marriage was helping thousands of women rebuild their lives after betrayal and abuse. Her phone rang as she parked outside City Hall. Emma calling from school. Mom, guess what? I got the lead in the school play. I'm going to be Marie Curie. That's amazing, sweetheart. I'm so proud of you. I told my teacher that Marie Curie reminds me of you because she was a scientist who proved that women can do anything men can do, even better sometimes. Zara felt tears welling up in her eyes. Her daughter was growing up with confidence, ambition, and the absolute certainty that she could achieve anything she set her mind to. That was the real victory, not the destruction of Alexander's empire, but the creation of a strong, fearless daughter who would never accept being underestimated or mistreated. I can't wait to see you in the play. We'll all be there cheering you on. All of us. Even Bio Dad. Emma had taken to calling Alexander Bio Dad to distinguish him from Marcus, who she simply called Dad. If you want him there, absolutely. Cool. I want him to see that his daughter is awesome, even though he missed most of me growing up. That evening, the whole family celebrated Emma's casting with her favorite dinner and ice cream. As Zara looked around the table at Marcus, Michael, Emma, and her growing belly, she realized that she'd achieved something she'd never even known she wanted. A family built on honesty, mutual respect, and genuine love. Alexander had given her the gift of learning her own strength, even though that hadn't been his intention. His betrayal had forced her to stop hiding her capabilities and start building the life she actually wanted rather than the life she thought she should want. What are you thinking about? Marcus asked as they cleaned up the dishes. Just how different everything is from what I planned 8 years ago. Better or worse? Zara looked at their children playing in the living room, thought about the foundation that was changing lives across the country, and felt the baby moving in her belly. Infinitely better. I thought I wanted a traditional marriage where I supported my husband's career and stayed in the background. Instead, I got to discover that I'm capable of running my own empire while raising amazing children with a partner who actually appreciates my strength. Alexander's loss was definitely my gain, Marcus said, pulling her into his arms. As they danced slowly in their kitchen to music only they could hear, Zara reflected on the journey that had brought them to this moment. The betrayal that had once felt like the end of her world had actually been the beginning of her real life. She'd gotten her revenge, but more importantly, she'd gotten her freedom. And sometimes, living well really is the sweetest victory of all. The little girl who would one day be named Catherine kicked strongly, as if eager to join this family of survivors and thrivers. Zara smiled, knowing that her youngest daughter would grow up in a world where women didn't have to choose between love and success, where strength was celebrated rather than hidden, and where the best revenge against those who underestimate you is simply proving them wrong in the most spectacular way possible. 8 years after the worst betrayal of her life, Zara Richardson-Shin had everything she'd ever wanted and more. That was justice. That was victory. That was the end of one story and the beginning of another.